Welcome back. Now, as the weather has been rather warm recently, I thought I'd cover something more current with regards to that unbearable heat. And yes, I'm very much aware of, I usually upload twice a week, but because of the heat here, and me being English and not being able to tolerate any kind of heat, I haven't been able to finish projects. So last night I finished a video, but I've got to render it this morning, which means while it's rendering, I get to then go and test more bouncy castles.
Yes. You're not a wanker. Spanking the money.
Is it still really hot over there, Omegon?
It is, but it's not obviously. It's very. I'm very reluctant to say it's hot when Suits in Australia. I just feel like it's not going to mean shit. But we English, well, I especially, am not overly fond of the warmth, especially that blasted humidity. And the story we're going to talk about covers that. Now, for those of you watching, do you recall the video where somebody complained about air conditioning being sexist? If not, here is a clip.
There I was thinking it was just me that had a problem, but it turns out it's the air conditioning that's sexist.
I know. So many women in our office have the exact same problem. You know, we just sit there absolutely freezing at our desks trying to type. You can probably tell I've got a cold right now, which I blame all on the AC. And so it's just so actually quite nice to see this research. It's just such a relief to know that there's actually proof that this is happening, that women, you know, do feel the cold more than men, and that the AC in offices is normally regulated more for a male's temperature than a woman's.
It is relevant to what we're about to talk about because it is somewhat amusing and also a bit irritating. It also dredges up old memories of my own from school. Woolly jumpers in summer, not cool at all. Now, before we get into that, I'm going to need a sandwich. Oh, Rankay.
Lord Omegon, please accept this turkey and Colby Jack cheese sandwich I made for you. I also included some cherry tomatoes and some craisins for snacks. Love you.
Delicious. Thank you very much. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to be addressing two articles, both of which cover a similar topic and have amusing results. The first would be a man sent home from work for wearing shorts in 30-degree heat and then goes back in his mum's dress. Now, the reason for this is because in this unbearable heat, what we consider to be unbearable heat, the company he works for has a strict dress code. The contradiction being that while he has to wear a suit, a lot of the female colleagues do not. They wear dresses and are able to get away with wearing thinner fabric clothing as long as they look smart and presentable in a call centre. So the gentleman goes in and wears shorts and is sent home for that, and he tweets this out. He also confirms that where he is, the temperature is unbearable. So after pointing out the obvious hypocrisy, he decides to go into his mother's wardrobe and put on a delightful dress, and goes to work in it expecting to be sent home. But that's not what happens at all. He ends up getting an email from his employer saying, due to the extremely warm temperatures currently, it has been agreed that gentlemen in the office are permitted to wear 3/4 length shorts. So they get to go in looking like skaters or basketball players. Yay. Which is a win. Now this brings up the subject I earlier mentioned about the air conditioning, because it is accused, or men are being accused of being sexist, or were being accused of being sexist for turning up the air conditioning which made the office colder. This problem arises because some girls are allowed to wear thinner fabric clothing, summer vests and dresses, as long as they look smart and presentable and don't break those company rules. Not all companies, of course. Whereas guys are expected to wear suits, suit jackets, vests, ties, top button done up even, which means they're going to get hotter quicker, and they'll need it to be cooler in the office to be able to function, which means the girls get colder. So the obvious compromise is everyone gets to wear a dress, surely. Or no one wears a dress. Everyone wears suits, like in banks. I'm just going to add that the next story that ties into this, I can relate to an extent. And I'm really happy this guy won because the heat is unbearable. And it isn't right that a standard is held for one gender but not the other, which before we continue allows me the opportunity to tell you a small anecdote that does tie into this and will into the next story along with another anecdote, because I just want to fill you with anecdotal evidence. This story takes place in my previous employment. You see, I used to be a cell phone engineer. The building itself was an inferno most of the time because it was mostly metal, but it was a lab-conditioned environment, so you had to wear a strict uniform, including a lab coat, along with some electrostatic discharge cables around your heels, which were heel straps, and some on your wrists if you were engineers that connected to your desk. A lot of the girls that worked there did not wear their lab coats because they'd forged doctor's notes because they didn't like the fact that the coats made them look frumpy. And they got away with it because they were afraid, the company were afraid of being accused of discriminating against people who were larger breasted. And that isn't even a lie. That is a comment I recalled seeing Human Resources. It was embarrassing. Almost as embarrassing as this next article, which is also quite funny. So we'll just dive right into it, shall we? Schoolboys turn up for class dressed in skirts in protest over strict no-shorts uniform policy despite heatwave. Students at ISCA College formed a mass protest over inflexible uniform policy, which consists boys wearing long trousers even throughout the summer. Add to that the senior boys would also have to wear blazers in the heat. Now, of course, a teacher will tell them they can take it off during classes, but it is a mandatory part of their uniform. Unless the school has air conditioning, or college has air conditioning, they're going to suffer regardless. Now, all of this came about because when the boys, or some boys, challenged the headmistress on this subject, she suggested they wear skirts instead, when it would be easier for them to wear shorts. So 5 boys decided to take her literally because kids do that. And the following day, 50 additional boys did the same thing, some borrowing skirts from their peers. Now, not all of this went punishment-free, with some of the kids being put in isolation for their heresy, some wearing skirts that were too short or some having hairy legs. Horror. Some parents even pointed out the obvious double standard that girls get to wear skirts, but the boys don't get to wear shorts. In the heat, the boys are meant to wear this upright uniform that will cause them to suffer heat frustration, but the girls get treated differently for some reason. Now, as amusing as it is that the boys rather enjoyed wearing the skirts because they found out that everything was a bit more airy, and add to that, the school has also decided it may change its policy and include shorts in the uniform, which would be the smart thing to do, I'm going to tell you an anecdote from my school time. That's right. This is like partially an informative video, but mostly me just telling you stories about my childhood. Anyway, so my secondary school, or high school to others, had a fairly strict uniform code as well. Other schools had blazers, we had woolly jumpers, and you couldn't take them off, and boys had to wear trousers. During the summer, you could see the sweat patches on some of the boys' armpits through the woolly jumper. It was quite impressive that the school was so inflexible on this, that they would allow someone to pass out and just send them home, rather than bend on that. So I found a way around it, and it involved something similar to what the boys did. Except, courtesy of my heritage, I simply went to school in a kilt, and I got away with it. I wonder why. I never questioned this. I should have. I should find out why. By the way, I look great in a kilt, and I thought I'd share that with you, because I wanted to. Now, as earlier mentioned, and I think I may have mentioned it during the second article as well, there is this obvious standard. If companies maintain a consistent level, where everyone has to wear the same uniform, then it's fine. If everyone at school wears the same uniform, if you have uniforms at school, that is, if you're lucky and you don't, I am so jealous of you. Then the school should maintain a standard that accommodates for the fact that the summers are getting hotter. This summer especially, we've seen some temperatures that we haven't seen for decades. But the fact that the school accommodates for girls and the employers accommodate for women, but does not accommodate for the men, is sexist. Let's face it, it is. This isn't one of those times where you simply tell someone to man up. In a school classroom, you're hardly going to be given an extra bottle of cold water, even though that won't really keep you cooler, because eventually that kid's going to pass out. And at a call centre, do you really think they're going to let you simply keep going up to the water cooler fountain or whatever it is you use to get more drinks, even though, again, that's not going to keep you cooler, that's just going to hydrate you? We regularly get told about workplace-related sexism and unfair education. This, however small you may regard it, is one that is in men's favour, although it's not really something that's in their favour, it's something they suffer, so it's a kind of discrimination. Not that anyone should be counting discrimination points, regardless of how unfair and obvious this one is. Thank you all for listening.